What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. On today's video I have a good one for you. Today's video we're talking about a shoe that is already wildly popular, and with this version we have had a huge update and it has really taken it to the next level. Guys, today we are talking about HOKA's Bondi 9. Let's get into it. Before we get started, I do just want to say that this video is in partnership with my friends over at Roadrunner Sports. Now, Roadrunner Sports was good enough to send me this pair of the HOKA Bondi 9 for the purpose of review. However, they haven't told me what to say, they don't have any editorial privileges, and all the thoughts and opinions are my own. With that said, you are going to be able to head over to Roadrunner Sports and pick up your own pair of the Bondi 9 for $170. Now look, $170, that is $5 more than the Bondi 8 last year. But trust me when I tell you that HOKA has made some updates to the Bondi 9 and it more than justifies that $5 price increase. So as far as stack height goes, for a men's version we have 43 in the heel, 38 in the forefoot, and for the women's version we have 42 in the heel, 37 in the forefoot, both for a 5mm drop. Now get this, HOKA has added 2mm of stack height to the Bondi 9 over the Bondi 8, so it's going to be even more plush, more cushioning. But the story doesn't end there, but we're going to come back to the midsole. Now, HOKA also claims that in a US men's size 10, the Bondi 9 would tip the scale at 10.5 ounces or 298 grams. However, in my size, a US men's size 12.5, it tips the scale at 12.8 ounces or 362 grams. So it's not a light shoe, but the shoe is deceptively light. In fact, it does ride a lot lighter than the scale would actually indicate. And if you're already a fan of the Bondi, the sample size of the Bondi 9 is actually about an ounce lighter than the Bondi 8. So HOKA has added that 2mm of stack height to the midsole, and they've managed to slash the weight. It works. Now, if you are looking at picking up a pair of the Bondi 9, you're probably looking at some of the competitors, and if you are looking at some of the competitors, you are probably looking at something like the ASICS Gel Nimbus 27. Now the Gel Nimbus 27 has 43 in the heel, 35 in the forefoot for an 8mm drop. It costs $165, and in my size tips the scale at 372 grams. So in my size it's 10 grams more than the Bondi 9. Sticking with ASICS, you're probably going to look at the Glide Ride Max. Now the Glide Ride Max has 44 in the heel, 38 in the forefoot for a 6mm drop. It'll cost $170, so the same price as the HOKA Bondi 9, and in my size tips the scale at 349 grams. So in my size the Glide Ride Max is 13 grams less than the Bondi 9. And finally, what I think is most comparable is the Brooks Glycerin Max. Now these are alike in enough ways that I think I'm going to do their own head-to-head video. But for now, the Glycerin Max has 45 in the heel, 39 in the forefoot for a 6mm drop. It'll cost $200, so that's $30 more than the Bondi 9. And in my size tips the scale at 379 grams. So it weighs 17 grams more than the Bondi 9, but still very comparable. Okay. But let's dig into some of the details of the Bondi 9, and I'm going to hold this up so you can see the heel collar. And just looking at it like this, it's probably difficult to tell that there's been any change, but HOKA has really slimmed down this heel collar. Now there's still a lot of padding, it's still going to be super comfortable to put your foot in. In fact, I should probably show you the Bondi 8 right next to it. Now, I don't know how well you can see that, but the heel collar on the Bondi 8 is remarkably thicker than the heel collar on the Bondi 9. This is partly where they've been saving some weight. Now, the heel counter on the Bondi 9 is very rigid. If you do suffer with some heel slip in some of your running shoes, this rigid heel counter is really going to play a part in keeping that heel locked down. And we have a nice L-fair to give you a little bit of grip just to help pull those shoes on. Now, there is no heel pull on the Bondi 9 the way there is on the Bondi 8, but you know, now that I'm looking at that heel pull on the Bondi 8, it kind of looks like an afterthought. So I really am liking what HOKA has done with the heel pull and L-fair on the Bondi 9. It looks a lot more well thought out. And then just HOKA is showing their attention to detail on the Bondi 9 with this contoured foam coming around the outside of the heel collar. This is 3D molded. It just looks really sharp. It adds to the premium appearance of the Bondi 9. For the upper, HOKA is using an engineered mesh. I haven't had any problems with breathability. It seems very breathable, even though I have been running through the winter, so it hasn't been super hot down here in Florida, but I found the Bondi 9 to be fairly breathable. Oh, and the upper of the Bondi 9 is using 55% recycled polyester, which is always good to see, right? Now, HOKA is somewhat known for having narrow shoes, especially in the toe box, and we're talking about the regular width. But I can say that in the Bondi 9, I really didn't have any issues like feeling my little toe on the lateral side. So just by that, I can say that the Bondi 9 is maybe slightly wider in the toe box than some other HOKA shoes. The tongue on the Bondi 9 is fairly thick, as we would expect from a premium daily trainer. However, it's not as thick as the tongue on the Bondi 8. So again, HOKA is saving weight by getting rid of some of that excess padding. And even though they have got rid of some of the padding on the tongue of the Bondi 9, I didn't experience any lace bite. Like, there's still enough padding there to do its job. The tongue is not gusseted, and we do have a lace loop right on the front. So really no issues with the tongue migrating around while I was running. As far as overlays go, yeah, fairly standard. Got the HOKA branding here on the lateral side, got a little HOKA bird here on the medial side. There's the underlay around the toe box just to keep that upper off your toes. Reinforcements coming along the eyelet chain. Oh, we do have that extra hole right at the top of the eyelet chain in case you need to do the lace lock. And then we just got some overlays here on the back, right on the heel counter with the name Bondi 9. Now I've come to the part that I've been most excited to tell you about. Like, everything about this shoe has been leading up to this moment because HOKA has changed the Bondi 9 in such a way that it has made it more of a runner's shoe. So before the Bondi 9, yes, there were a lot of runners that ran in the Bondi, but also there were a lot of people who would use the Bondi for work. You know, the type of people that work on their feet all day. Like, off the top of my head, I'm thinking doctors and nurses. And I always thought the Bondi 8 was just perfect for them. But with the Bondi 9, HOKA has replaced their compression molded EVA with a supercritical EVA. Now that's the same EVA that you'll find in the Mark 6, and it's a nice foam. In fact, I wish HOKA would just replace all their compression molded EVAs with that supercritical EVA because it changes the shoe into something that is a really fun ride. And that's what they've done with the Bondi 9. They've changed it from like a typical daily trainer, you know, that's just a bit boring, to a max cushion daily trainer that is fairly exciting to run in. Now, before I dig into the ride and the midsole foam, because the ride is all about the midsole foam, let me just show you the outside of this. Yeah, we got a good amount of Durabrasion outsole rubber. It is fairly thick. And I'm going to say that the HOKA Bondi 9 are going to last a good long time. You know, just by looking at the thickness of this rubber, I'm going to say they're going to last above average. In fact, let me just look at my pair of the HOKA Bondi 8s, and it looks like it's about the same amount of rubber. So if you have run in the Bondi 8 and you've got a good amount of volume in them, I imagine you're going to get about the same out of the Bondi 9. Okay, so now let's talk about ride, because that supercritical EVA foam makes the shoe exciting. And you won't often hear me describe a max cushion daily trainer as exciting. Like, generally they do the job, and typically the job of a max cushion daily trainer is comfort, not excitement. Well, the Bondi 9 sprinkles in a little bit of excitement. In fact, the first run I did in the Bondi 9 was a tempo run. Guys, I've got to tell you, I was surprised how well the shoe picked up the pace and held that pace. Now, I would never recommend you buy the Bondi 9 with the intention of taking it out for those speed days. Guys, it's not a race shoe, it's not a workout shoe. In fact, my point by telling you this is that if you find yourself having to run fast in the Bondi 9, you can, and it feels good. In fact, I'd say it feels better or quicker or snappier than any of those competition shoes that I showed you before, except maybe the Glycerin Max. Now, it is a max cushion shoe, remember, 43 in the heel, but it's not too soft, and I think it's that lack of too softness that gives it that springiness, that gives it that response. It really is a very good blend of softness and firmness. Like I've said it before about a few shoes, but the Bondi 9 fits right into that Goldilocks zone. Now, one more thing, when we are talking about a max cushion daily trainer, sometimes they can feel a little clunky. The Bondi 9 does not feel clunky at all. It just flows very nicely on your foot, and that is mainly to do with HOKA's Meta Rocker and of course that midsole foam. But the clunkiness is also to do with, and I needed both shoes to actually notice this, but oftentimes when we have a max cushion daily trainer, sometimes the brands will make a really wide base, and they'll make it a little too wide in some cases, which is great for stability if you have a nice wide platform, but we have to find that sweet spot. And if I hold this up, you can see there is really not a lot of sole flare on the Bondi 9. Now, if I hold up the Bondi 8 next to it, and you may have to like zoom in to see the difference, but the sole flare on the forefoot of the Bondi 8 is much wider, like it comes out a little further than that of the Bondi 9. And that just makes the shoe feel a lot more nimble, for lack of a better word. I mean, the Bondi 9 is certainly not nimble, but I wasn't kicking myself because that sole flare on the forefoot was just too wide. So in my experience, the HOKA Bondi 9 is actually, it's a fairly stable option. Now, not stable in the way that if you need a stability shoe, but for a neutral max cushion shoe, it's actually fairly stable. So yeah, the HOKA Bondi 9, it's going to maintain its like king of the hill status for workers that are on their feet all day. It's going to work great for walkers, just as it did with the Bondi 8 and the Bondi 7 before that. But what HOKA has done with the HOKA Bondi 9 is that they've now made it good for runners. And if you are looking for a max cushion daily trainer, I think the HOKA Bondi 9 is really one to consider. So now I'd like to hear from you. Have you ever run in any of the Bondis? If you have, let me know. And are you thinking of picking up a pair of the HOKA Bondi 9? Don't forget to head over to Roadrunner Sports to pick up a pair for yourself. But for now, it's Matt B. This has been my review of HOKA's Bondi 9. Be kind, be happy, run well. See you in a couple of days.